No one is stopping ICE from doing their job. They have a job to do when you deal with dangerous people
Dude,
such as...
you may want to talk to Alvin Bragg about that. That's Eric Adams saying mayor of New York saying nobody's stopping ICE from doing their job. Dude, they stopped cooperating with ICE. Literally, New York City stopped cooperating with ICE. That's a story. That happened. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you, top of this third hour. No, that's true. They had their city sanctuary policies, and that's the entire reason why they had these these repeat offenders like this who are in the country illegally are allowed to roam free. I mean, let's go back to the story, January of 2020. They had a 92-year-old woman that was murdered. And she was murdered by an individual who was in the country illegally. And the New York Department of Corrections was criticized because they refused to cooperate with ICE. This is from CNN, a big, giant conservative entity, CNN. They had refused to cooperate with ICE. There was a Guyanese national, 21 years old, who had previously been released from custody in November, despite the fact that ICE lodged a detainer against him. Meaning, ICE, the detainer is something that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement it's a request for local law enforcement to keep people who are in the country illegally in custody for up to 48 hours so that they can be transferred into federal custody by ICE. And New York City refused to do it. They let the guy go, and he went and murdered a 92-year-old woman. I mean, we could go on and on. There's all kinds of stuff. Maria Fuertes. She was beaten to death and left on the street unconscious. She was knocked to the ground, and he stomped on her head. Oh, and then he sexually assaulted her. 92-year-old woman. This is just one of, we could sit here for the rest of the hour. You won't do it. All kinds of stories where New York refused to cooperate with ICE. And they actually made it illegal to threaten to report someone's immigration status in New York. That is in October of 2021. They made it illegal to threaten to report someone to ICE who is in the country illegally. So even if you were in New York and they were in illegally, you couldn't say you were going to report them to ICE. There was a law that was literally signed into effect by Bill de Blasio that officially limited the relationship between New York City law enforcement and ICE. That has not been rescinded, by the way. It's been in effect since 2014. So I don't know what the hell Eric Adams is talking about, because that is categorically false. His own damn office has been stopping ICE from doing its job. And Alvin Bragg has been pushing it the whole time. The whole time. Now, this comes back to this story, and this is, by the way, this is ABC 7 in New York, of the beating of these two law enforcement officers in Times Square at the hands of these illegal immigrants. And how the DA's office had declined to bring charges initially until they got a lot of heat. And he was defending the decision. They have relied on that the whole time. They really should have been taken into custody immediately in a bail set, but they didn't do it. In fact, Chief Patrol of NYPD said it was a bail eligible offense, and they didn't do it. And they don't work with ICE. So Eric Adams apparently he don't know what the hell's going on in his own city, because that had been signed into law and it's been in effect since 2014. The reduction in cooperation, a drastic decrease in cooperation between ICE and the New York law enforcement. I mean, it is something else. So they were absolutely stopped from doing their job. And that's not just in New York. That's in a ton of other cities. In California, where's that one young lady that was killed by the, Kate Steinle? Was that her name? They refused to work with ICE. That was a guy, in fact, in California, they refused 5,600 ICE detainer requests from the feds. And that was in, what, 1 year? That's crazy. They declined tons of ICE detainer requests. Tons of them. Do you remember the story? Let me bring this up. The young man that was killed. He was an athlete, Jamil Shaw. I first talked about this, and actually first, back in 2015, brought it up to the Trump campaign. That's how they knew him. Where you had Jamil Shaw, 17 years old. He was, lived in L.A. His mother's active duty military, was active duty military at the time. And Jamil Shaw Jr., 17, he was walking home from football practice. And he was a star athlete. We had his dad, Jamil Shaw Sr., on the show before. And, I mean, just a star athlete, star student. He was the running back for Los Angeles High School. He was the Southern League's most valuable player in 2007. Rutgers was looking at him. His mother, Army Sergeant Anita Shaw, she was on her second tour of duty in Iraq, so active duty. And Jamil Shaw Jr. was walking home. He was about 3 doors away from getting to his house. And he was on the cell phone. He was on his phone with his girlfriend. And his dad had told him, hurry up and get home. So he was walking home. He was on the phone with his girlfriend. And apparently a group of illegal immigrants pulled up in a car, jumped out, asked Jamil Shaw, according to the LA Times, if he belonged to a gang. And when he didn't answer, they shot and killed him and left him dead on the street. He was not affiliated with a gang. And the crazy thing is that Jamil Shaw Sr. had heard the shots. And he came out. And he found his son. One of those individuals was an ICE detainer request denied, by the way. I don't know if y'all knew that. So when people say that ICE could do their jobs, they're literally being blocked by these sanctuary states and cities doing their jobs. Democrats didn't want to pay attention to Jamil Shaw Jr. Maybe because he was a black teenager. And black lives only matter to the left when they can exploit them or they can use activists to burn down historically black neighborhoods. That's the only time the media cares about black lives. Remember how they got real mad at me in 2018 when I got up on national television and I said the media loves mass shootings because they do. They don't care, though, about what happens to black youth in Chicago. And they sure as hell don't care what happens to black youth in L.A. They don't at all. They only want to be able to use white lives and talk about that as for fear-mongering. They don't really, and that's why I think they're averse to all lives matter, too, because all lives really don't matter to them, if we're being honest. And I'm just assuming this by everything that they've reported over a 30-year period. You didn't hear anything. Jamil Shaw Sr.'s never been on CNN. He's never been on MSNBC. Man's heartbroken. His namesake, his only son. Star athlete. I mean, this kid was all-American. Good student. Great athlete. Son of an active duty soldier. His life was snuffed out by people who were in the country illegally, and one of them was an ICE detainer request denied. You go back over this and you wonder how many of these stories we got to tell. All this blood is on the hands of this administration. All these kids that have gone missing. That New York Times piece that we were telling you about. All these kids that have gone missing. You realize you're talking about 88,000 kids that have been drugged through God knows what, pushed across the southern border by the cartels. Their fast-track process because Xavier Becerra just wants a number. He doesn't care about welfare. And then they disappear. Some of them disappear. They said an inordinate amount go to the same area, and they can't find them. They found a bunch of them in some factories. U.S. Chamber of Commerce comes out, oh, we like this bill because U.S. Chamber of Commerce likes cheap labor. They like keeping people and denying them the all-American ability to increase their status in life. That's why I want to come back to this thing right here. This is, let's see, where's the one where they're talking about the American dream? Oh, audio soundbite 7. Let's hear more from Adams on this, and let's take this apart too.
I strongly believe that the overwhelming number of the 175,000 up to about, they're here trying to take the next step in the American dream. And I see them, I speak with them. I think they come from the rich tradition of those who come from immigrant backgrounds, who contribute to the society and the tax base. If ever was a time we realized the importance of our immigrant population, I think it was during COVID. I saw them out delivering for New Yorkers. They could not shelter in place. They did the job that caused them to be in.
This is such a ridiculous soundbite. It is such a ridiculous soundbite. This piece in the New York Times gets into this story. These are some of the kids that were drug up, not because they wanted to. They were either used as child trafficking under the Flores Agreement. They were drug up somehow. Listen to this. You tell me if this sounds like the American dream. A 15-year-old girl named Carolina. She did not willfully come up. She was brought up. She was trafficked up. She's fast-tracked through Joe Biden's NGO partnership, the trafficking organization, and she works in a Cheerios factory overnight. Every 10 seconds, she stuffs a sealed plastic bag of cereal, according to the New York Times, into the passing yellow carton. She says sometimes she's tired. She doesn't feel sick. She works every hour she can work. They have 12-year-old roofers in Florida and Tennessee. They have slaughterhouse workers. This is true. That's all true. This is like an actually good story New York Times wrote. Health and Human Services promises that they check on these minors, and then they don't. They lost over 85,000 children. That number's up to 88,000 children as of last month. They don't have any contact with a third of the illegal immigrant children that were dragged in, not of their own choice. These are not kids. These are actually you're talking under 14, guys. I'm not talking about 18-year-olds. I'm talking about kids. Does that sound like the American dream? When you hear somebody like Eric Adams speak from his seat of privilege, and he talks about the American dream, is that what the American dream sounds like? What the hell are they selling people? Yeah, come illegally to the United States, where you get to live a second-class life in the shadows, and you get to pick our fruit, like Jerry Nadler said. That's what these Marxists advertise as the American dream. It is anti-American. That is not what e pluribus unum means. And it is shameful that they present this as legitimate.